And we'll go to Eric. He says, thanks for the love, Hacksaw. It's been tough in LA.
It's so hard. I struggle watching TV. The horrors of what we're going through, Eric. And, John and I talked about this. I lived through the fires of 2007. My whole area in Rancho Bernardo burned to the ground. I got burned. My house got badly damaged. So, I just have a tough time dealing with fires and smoke now, based on what I experienced, and my heart goes out to them. And there's no solution. I mean, there's nothing that can be done. I think when we were coming on today, I think there are now 7 active fires that is 0 containment in their 3rd day in Los Angeles. Just terrible. Global warming has changed.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than global warming. The people are politicizing it and everything else. It's gotten messy. But yeah, I remember the 2007 fires, and that was the Witch Creek fire that ripped through RB, and we had to evacuate here in Poway. And then the 2003 fires in Poway were really bad as well.
Scripps Ranch, Tierra Santa.
Yes. Yeah, and it caught part of Poway then as well. So yeah, tough go for these folks. Hopefully they can get their lives sorted back. But I mean, imagine just showing up at your house and everything is just obliterated and it's just ashes. It looks a lot like the scene that we saw in Lahaina and Maui.
Exactly. I mean, the windstorm. And now in Maui, that was on flat land when it went through Lahaina. But these are through canyons and Hollywood Hills and Pacific Palisades, or all those houses are built on, into the mountains, and there's dry canyons with brush, and the fires whipped by winds. You had winds of 105 miles an hour the other night, 85 miles an hour yesterday morning. Palomar Mountain had winds of 85 miles an hour. Luckily, there were no sparks there.
Yeah, thank God.
So heart goes out to them. It's just so hard to think about and to talk about. But thank you for the thought, Eric.
Okay, let's go here to 4RXLA. He goes, Lee, you know Telesco well and how he thinks. What do you think he will do in regard to head coach and draft picks? AP lost his job when he hired Getsy and started Minshew.
Well, Telesco was fired Thursday morning. He was let go too, which shocked, I think, a lot of people. And then the story kind of came out that Telesco was not in on the final meeting when Mark Davis made the decision to get rid of Antonio Pierce. So that had to be a message to Telesco that his days were numbered, and that Tom Brady was carrying a lot more influence now in the Raiders situation. Tom probably needs to step away. I don't know that he'll ever get another general manager's job because he had this failure on his resume after the way it ended up badly with the Chargers. So maybe he just goes back into player personnel and becomes a scout, etc. He's a good man. I like them. Always got along well with him. Tough, not bold. He's very different. Ultra conservative as it relates to draft picks and not making bold deals and not making crazy deals. I was told that Antonio Pierce tried to get him to trade from the 13th slot to the number 2 to get Jaden Daniels, but the price tag's so steep. You bankrupt everything else on your draft board if you try to go from 13 to 2, and he couldn't do it. And what he did was they stayed the course. He got 3 starters out of last year's draft, including Brock Bowers. And they had a little bit of bad luck because there were a run on quarterbacks, or 6 quarterbacks taken before the Raiders pick ever came up. Nobody expected that to happen. Nobody expected Bo Nix to go early. Nobody expected Michael Penix, who they liked, to go where he went to Atlanta. They thought one of those guys would drop into the Raiders slot and they'd pick him. And instead there was the run on the QBs at the top. I mean, and the Raiders got a phenomenal tight end in Brock Bowers, but at the end of the day, they never solved the quarterback issue.
Wasn't it kind of weird that he ended up with the Raiders in the first place? I mean, I obviously got fired with the Chargers, but I remember he just got hired with the Raiders. I'm like, oh, well, good for him. But yeah, he ended up going to the Raiders, which is a disaster. I mean, that's just got to be awful for him.
I was shocked. I was shocked that he put on the silver and black, or as he would say, it's black and gray. And I said, no, it's silver and black. But I hope things work out for him. He'll probably resurface in probably a very different role. Too bad.
Okay, keep moving. Okay, let's go here to Raul, and he says, fans forum, hey, what is next for the Raiders, and do you see Eric Bieniemy coming to the NFL?
Well, the rumor is that the offensive coordinator in Kansas City is probably going to wind up going somewhere else. And if that happens, then Bieniemy is available maybe to come back to work for Andy Reid. I just tend to think Eric got a really bad deal at UCLA. I mean, Deshaun Foster, he fired a whole bunch of the assistants he had just hired. Gave these guys 9 months on the job, and they don't fit. We're supposed to know that. How did you hire these guys if they're not going to work out? I thought he got a real raw deal at UCLA. So maybe he goes back to work for Andy Reid in Kansas City, and his name's not being mentioned too many other places right now.
He was such a hot name about a year or two ago.
Well, he 3 years he was a hot candidate, but he didn't get hired, and I guess he didn't interview well.
Really?
So,
well, he's kind of a loudmouth as a coach, right? Bullying guys around. I wonder if he was maybe like that in an interview.
He probably told people what he thought, and that's part of the interview process. But he never got hired, and so be it. I'm not going to say his coaching career is over, but he probably needs to go back to work for somebody that he worked for before who really believes in him, and Andy Reid might have that opening.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, next one.
Keep moving. Okay, here, let's go to Callan. Sports-wise, Lee, which team is more of a world of hurt, the New York Rangers or the Vancouver Canucks? Like I said a few shows ago, my pick for the Rangers to win it all looks worse by the day.
They're not playing very well, and I've already made a couple of trades, and there might be 2 more trades out there. I don't know if it's players making so much money or whether it's Peter Laviolette, the head coach, and the players are just not responding to the sales pitch. The Vancouver situation is very different. I mean, they have a high payroll. They've got cap problems. They've had injury problems. I'd say it's almost a toxic locker room there. And Elias Pettersson came from abroad and is making $11 million a year, and he's supposed to be a big hired gun goal scorer, and he's not. It has not, at least at this point. And JT Miller's a really feisty, fiery veteran player. He's one of their captains, but he's just had a problem in the room with Pettersson and a few other guys, and they got problems on defense, and they're up against a cap because they got so many high-paid players. I think somebody's going to leave Vancouver, and I don't know if it's going to be JT Miller or Pettersson. One of these guys is probably going to be traded. The Canucks they've made a lot of deals in the last couple of years just trying to find the right mix. Has not happened yet, and they're in the middle of a long road trip, and they're not playing very well. They have a lousy record at home with all this goal scoring they got. They got a lousy record at home too. So there's going to be an implosion. Maybe at Madison Square Garden, or maybe it's going to be in BC.
Teams in a world of hurt, man. We could make a list.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
We could add the Raiders and the Padres.
That doesn't include half the NBA.
Well, that too.
Hey, when you get spare time, make sure the coffee cup isn't at the edge of the table. You open up and look at the standings, the NBA. See how many teams are 7-27 in the league. It's god awful. And don't spill the coffee on the carpet.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Next one.
Okay, let's go here to Carlos. He goes, any Roki Sasaki update?
Well, we just talked about it, Carlos, the fact that the Dodgers, by virtue of the deal with the Reds, picked up more international money, and the Dodgers have pooled the unspent money from last year, plus what they just got from the Reds, plus what they already had. The Dodgers now have $10.7 million in international pool money to offer Sasaki. His agent says he'll make a decision between January 15th and the 23rd. He has to decide by the 23rd. If indeed it's about opportunity, if indeed it's about a legacy franchise, if it's a chance to get all this additional endorsement money, Dodger Stadium sure looks like the place to do it. And there's a hell of a lot of difference between the $10.7 million the Dodgers could give him and say what the Padres could offer at 6.1.
Well, there was a lot of speculation that he was going to maybe consider a mid-market team, right?
Yes.
Didn't want to have all the spotlight on him. Didn't want to be in the shadow of Ohtani and Yamamoto. But right now, given all the chaos of the Padres, you got to believe it's 80% chance he goes to the Dodgers or 20% with the field with anybody else.
Well, the Yankees are out there. Red Sox are out there. I was told the Mets are out there, and the Mets obviously have the ability to do a lot of creative things, and it's the number one market in the country. So it'll be fascinating to see where he winds up. But the Dodgers, they just keep creatively finding ways to do these deals. I mean, they invented, quote, the modern day deferral thing to get Ohtani, and now look at this.
It's like a layaway plan.
Yeah.
But it works. Okay, let's keep moving. Let's go here to Greg. He goes, Lee, what do you remember about the Seahawks that you covered for 2 years? We need you back up here. Great show.
It's fun to see a team that was losing grow into being really good, and I got there at the right time. I liked Dennis Erickson, then that became Mike Holmgren, and we all know the rest. You guys wound up going to the Super Bowl. That was a team that was put together with defense. I like their general manager. Actually, he wound up coming to work for the Chargers for a while, Randy Mueller. But, they were trying to fix a franchise that had really fallen on bad times, and the Seahawks got progressively better and better. They had Warren Moon at quarterback, but he woke up as an old man one year. And then they went with a Division II quarterback who threw the hell out of the ball, John Kitna. But he didn't have the firepower. But they had really good players, but it didn't come together till Holmgren got there. So love Seattle. What a great football town. And Pacific Northwest, just football crazy. And the Kingdom was crazy. I mean, what a great place to broadcast. So I had a good time doing the Seahawks for a couple of years.
I was just going to ask you if they were still playing in the Kingdom, and yeah, they were. But what a stadium that was! Well, it was like a concrete dome.
Exactly, but boy, it was noisy as hell. It was a tough place to play. Mm-hmm. And then they went outdoors when they tore the Kingdom down. They went out and played at Husky Stadium, which is a great college venue right on the lake. And then they went back into the new place, which fabulous the way that thing's been built. And it's built right on the Kingdom site.
Yeah, and it's right there and generally kind of near downtown.
Yeah, Pioneer. I think it's called Pioneer Square.
And I'll tell you what, when I was up there with my son like about 5 years ago, and it was on game day, and man, they were blue and green everywhere you could look. Seahawks fans are really fired up for their team.
They're called the 12th man for a reason. Mm-hmm. And that new stadium is built. It is built at such a steep incline. The sound does not come out of that stadium. It just sits in a bowl. It's a tough venue to play in.
John Kitna, that's a name that I forgot all about. But they've had some interesting quarterbacks. I mean, Jim Zorn was there. Remember him?
Way back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, who was the best quarterback ever for the Seahawks, you think?
Well, the short window that Warren Moon was there, and he was at the tail end of his career. He was electric. And, boy, he could chuck that ball all over the place. So, yeah, they had great defenses, and Chuck Knox was just a phenomenal old-school coach. But Holmgren obviously took them where they'd never been before, Super Bowl. And then, obviously, Pete Carroll did that too.
Do you like the Seahawks uniforms, the way they embrace that electric green?
No, I don't like the lime green.
No, it's kind of like Oregon. They're trying to have a little bit of sizzle on their uniforms. I like it myself.
Yeah. Well, some people are warped.
But it's just that old, how should I say, that old native art style.
Yes.
With the design of the logo of the Seahawks. I really like that too.
Yeah. Well, they went back though, when they went back to the throwbacks, and they wore the old, I don't know what, blue, green, and silver that they wore back in the early days, and people really embrace that too. So I'm sorry, you don't look good in lime green. Don't be walking in there with lime green. Greg, thanks for the question. Next one.
Okay, let's go here to Austin. He goes, Notre Dame has been underrated since the 2012 BCS championship game against arguably the best Bama roster in history.
Well, the Irish have gotten with Marcus Freeman where they never got with Brian Kelly. It's kind of really interesting, Kelly was very pushy, was very successful, and then jumped and went to LSU. And Freeman got promoted, and he's creative. He's really good. I think of Marcus Freeman, creative genius defensive. I think of Pete Carroll and all that kind of stuff that he did at USC. Their defense is really good. And so this is going to be a tremendous challenge. But Penn State is old school, and this is the best breed of athletes I think Penn State has had in modern-day football. I can't attest to way back in the Paterno era, but boy, they got a bunch of guys who can run. So this will be a line of scrimmage game. It'll be fun to watch.
Marcus Freeman is a guy that I'm learning more about, and it's interesting is when you see him on the sidelines, he carries himself with he's very calm, got a lot of poise, and when I see him, I have confidence in that team because he's not scatterbrained, he's not running around yelling at people, he's got it all under control.
Yeah. He's got a philosophy. I think I forget the correct phrase, but it's something like the only thing that counts is today. Today, your preparation. Today, game day. That's the only thing that counts. Nothing else out there is important. And he's drilled that into his players. And that's a really good team. But I just don't know that they have enough athletes to compete with the speed that Penn State's going to bring to line of scrimmage. Penn State's defense is really fast. And Penn State's offense got a lot of diverse people.
So that game's tonight, right? Yes. The Notre Dame Penn State game. So what a great time for football.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, you think? Okay, let's keep going down the list here. And let's go here to Irene. And this was about who's going to fill up SoFi with the Vikings and the Rams. And she said, yeah, bandwagon for sure.
Oh, so she's of the opinion that Ram fan will show up this time.
Well, I think she's of the opinion that LA fans go for the winner. They'll show up for them.
But boy, Viking fans, they do travel. I got to believe there's going to be purple in that stadium. Now, I don't think it's going to be overrun like if it were a Steeler game or the Raider Nation showed up. But I think there'll be purple there. I posed the question. Somebody needs to answer it. who's won the fight for LA? Is it a Rams town still, or is it a Charger town? I don't know. It's a real tough call. I mean, Rams have been to the Super Bowl. Chargers haven't won bleep. Justin Herbert has never won a playoff game. Think about that. Now, that might change on Saturday when they play the Houston Texans, but what a great weekend ahead. And Harbaugh's done a great job. That's his history. What McVay has done to fix that young defense after losing all those players and having all the injuries in the offensive line, for him to be there in the playoffs, what a job by Sean McVay.
Yeah, both these coaches have done a great job. Yeah. I mean, fantastic job. But in the LA market, do you think that the USC Trojans are higher in the pecking order than either the Rams or the Chargers?
No, not any longer.
But it used to be that way.
Well, way back in the day, yeah. But the influences have changed immensely. It's an NFL town when it's not being a Dodger town or a Laker town. And, you know, I thought about this morning driving around because I had just written on my website about they've lost more offensive linemen at Southern Cal. They had 21 guys in the transfer portal. 5 offensive linemen have now left. 21 guys not wanting to be Trojans. When would you ever think that was possible?
Well, there's more money somewhere else, man.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about now. The whole thing has changed.
So that's where we are.
Okay. Let's go in here. Let's go to SGA Sports Talk channel. He says, I'm going with the Vikings winning 27-24 on a game-winning field goal over the Rams.
I guess the burning question to me is they got a lot of kids in that secondary. Can those kids hold up to Justin Jefferson, the tight end, and Jordan Addison? Because those guys make plays down the field, big yardage catches. And, you know, conversely, Darnold has dealt with a lot of pressure in his face. And Rams are going to have to blitz. And they got so many young guys who can run. Can they disrupt the rhythm of what Sam Darnold's all about? Because if they can't mess him up, then I just don't know if the Rams secondary is going to be able to hold up against Jefferson and Addison, because those two guys, what did I say, between them 146 receptions this year. Between them, they're averaging 14 yards a catch. That's chunk yardage plays.
Yeah, but the key is if Darnold can get the ball to him, which he was struggling to do last, what was it, Sunday Night Football.
But that's Detroit. And Detroit's defense, playing in Detroit, that's a whole different thing.
Now, for the Rams, the kids on defense, Jared Verse was one of their top picks. I mean, how do you think his season's gone?
Oh, phenomenal. Both he and the other kid out of Florida State have just been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they've made a difference in the personality. And I did not know whether or not they could replace Aaron Donald, the superstar who retired. It's probably going to be a future Hall of Famer. And then they traded their starter inside linebacker, leading tackler. He went to Seattle. I just didn't know that the Rams would be able to replace those guys. And what a job that Les Snead has done in terms of player personnel. They got so many draft picks, young guys, all starting, and they play with their hair on fire. You watch them closely against Darnold and the schemes and the blitz packages, and they can all run. It's very, very impressive.
It is. I mean, this is going to be 2 great coaches. I mean, O'Connell's going to have something cooking for this game as well. So many great playoff games in addition to the college football.
Concur, with the exception of what's going to happen in Baltimore and Buffalo.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Those might be steamrolls. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. 4R XLA says, yeah, Ramstown, 1 Lombardi to 0 for Chargers.
Okay. Feel free to pile on. That's no problem. I think the Rams are a better football team, both sides of the ball, than the Chargers are right now. But Herbert's just amazing. I mean, see that what he has done, 4 different offensive coordinators in 5 years. He hasn't missed a beat. I mean, his 5-year total statistics of yards, quarterback rating, touchdowns versus turnovers, amazing. First 5 years compared to other superstars in the league. Now, he's got nothing to show for it because they have not won a playoff game yet, but he's really, really good.
Did you see the interview with Justin Herbert where they asked him, what was the first time you realized that Jim Harbaugh was different? And then he said, Jim Harbaugh was talking about the day he was born, and he remembered the day he was born.
If you believe that,
is that more of that? The preaching the sermon in the tent,
tent revival,
tent
stuff,
revival.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So. We'll see. We'll see what they do in Houston. I think the Chargers can win in Houston. And again, am I biased? No, I'm opinionated.
You
think? At the end of the day, Chargers have gotten there by virtue of a substandard record. They played a lot of bad teams, and they've been able to get to the playoffs. Now, can they take this step forward? Can they beat the Houston Texans there? And the Texans are finally healthy, and They're dangerous at home. If the Chargers win this one, then this season has been a season of accomplishment. If they get beat in this first playoff game in Houston, which I think is the easiest of any of the AFC games, if they had to go to Baltimore, had to go to Buffalo, they would have got their doors blown off. If they can win in Houston, then they're taking a step forward and say, yeah, this has been a season of accomplishment. If they get beat, that's the same old, same old.
Well, this was supposed to be a rebuild year, and didn't they go like 5-12 last year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, even if they lose this game, it's still progress over the previous year. I mean, you got to give Harbaugh credit for that.
Well, but John, the reality is, though, here's the stat. I'll pull this number out at you because I had to reconfigure it again. So the teams they beat had a combined record of 60 and 116. They played a lot of bad football teams,
Yeah.
so they beat them. The teams they lost to had a combined record of 70 and 40. So when they played somebody good, they got punched in the mouth.
That's interesting. It's like the teams they lost to were only winning 1 out of every 3 games, and the teams they lost to were winning 2 out of 3, and the teams they beat were only winning 1 out of 3.
Yep.
Yeah, that's lopsided.
We'll see. I think they can win in Houston, but then again, maybe they won't because I don't know how complete and how really good a team the Chargers are right now. Go ahead. Next one.
Next one. Okay, let's go down here to Gary. And he says, if Sasaki wants to pitch in a 6-man rotation, he can't sign with San Diego.
Oh, it's a big issue. And the Dodgers are so deep in pitching, they've already indicated that they're going to go to a 6-man rotation. And the Mets have already indicated, and they're not done stockpiling arms. The Mets are going to go to a 6-man rotation. So I wish I had a specific about what Sasaki really values. But it's obvious that he's impressed with what the Dodgers have done with all the championships and all the historical pitching that they have. And this front office infighting, I think, really hurts them as it relates to imagery. And do you want to go to a place that may be chopping its payroll? Or do you want to go to a place where the insinuation is the Seidlers might think about selling the franchise somewhere down the road? So the Dodgers are here to stay, and the Dodgers have resources, and the Dodgers have a lot bigger history and luxury legacy than the Padres do.
The Dodgers could go with like an 8-man rotation with all the talent they have. It's unbelievable. Gary had a follow-up here, and he says, yeah, the timing of the lawsuit is horrible.
I think it's damaging. And I don't understand why it got to this point, because it was right there in the estate, in the will, what the order of succession would be for Peter Seidler, and it would be the 3 brothers. And why this happened and why she reacted the way she did, to me, it's kind of far-fetched. And to have the point person has to be a person of great business experience. And that's not her. Now, I don't know if these other brothers are totally qualified, but that's not her because she's done nothing of the sort.
Well, she apparently agreed not to be the point person a long time ago.
Signed a document.
Yeah. And that was when Peter Seidler was still alive. So some people are questioning how much does she really support the team if she's bringing up this lawsuit right now at this critical time. You know, and you want to support Sheila Seidler because she's the wife of Peter Seidler, who we all loved. But this whole thing is just so disruptive.
I think the timing is terrible. And we'll just see how it impacts the Sasaki thing. But there are problems. If ownership is mandating this payroll is not going higher than 170 or 180 or maybe 190, and they're at 244 as of today because of what the deals they just done with Dylan Cease and Arise, they're going to have to get that payroll down, which means guys are going to leave, which means it's not going to be the same team.
Yeah, what a mess. And then they're going to have to dump like 1 or 2 guys, 1 or 2 big time guys.
Well, yeah, I concur with you. They're going to have to move some money around. They're going to have to figure out a way. And they got contracts you can't trade. That's the other thing. You know, people have the opinion, well, you could trade Cronenworth. Well, but who wants $10 million a year for a guy who hits 240?
Right.
As much as I like him. Or you could trade Bogarts. Well, who wants a guy whose contract's going to go to age 42 who's shown declining statistics 3 straight years? So the past businesses contracts that A.J. Preller handed out are coming back to haunt him now because now he's boxed into a corner. He can't move him. He could move Arise. Now that there's a fixed dollar value, he could move Cease, but then it degrades your current roster.
This is the San Diego sports curse striking again, man.
Oh.
It just keeps rearing its head.
Absolutely amazing.
It is.
All right, let's do a couple more here and then we'll go to social media.
Okay, and Serrano has a quick one. He goes, it's a Raiders town still, Los Angeles.
Could be.
I think it still is.
Might be. Product hasn't been very good, though. Raider Nation, holy cow, not very good at all. Raider fans, I'll say this, they are loyal, they travel, they're probably drunk a lot too. The fact that the Raiders fans still support a team that's 102 games under 500 since 2003 just boggles my mind.
Well, it's because the Raiders brand means so much more than just the team.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously there's affiliation with gangs and that sort of thing, but it's kind of like the tough guy, and I just remember when the Chargers were in San Diego and then there were the Raider games, there was always it was a wild game at Qualcomm when they showed up. But there were a lot of fans in San Diego that were Raider fans that I'm convinced only supported the Raiders to upset the Charger fans, just to grind on them, and there's a lot of guys that just love that whole, we're going to do the vertical game and the Al Davis. And
but that was back in the day. Do you know how many decades ago that was?
But that logo, that brand, that whole thing still carries to even today, even if the team is a shadow of what that reputation was.
That's where we are. We'll see. They got a lot of work to get done to be good, and haven't been good in a long, long time.
Long time. Okay, let's go here to get some social media in, and who are we going to start with? Let's talk a little bit about college football. This is from Sean, and he goes, "Yeah, these kids have too much freedom to exercise their choice and free will." Sarcasm. "I miss the days of college student exploitation, denying college kids a say in their future and thinking employment should be at will is insane. Locking people down, control, and denying them their free will is absolutely the answer. I have college football to watch. They should be the priority of these colleges. It's not like it needs to be what it's in the best interest of the individual."
Well, that's a mouthful of a lot of conflicting statements there. At the end of the day, we were all excited to see great games, and there will be great games this weekend and obviously championship game. But in the big picture, is college football in a very good shape, in a very good state? I don't think it is at all. And now with, quote, player free agency, now with lawsuits, now with different revenue sharing, now with the NIL, if you only have 2 teams in your conference because of boosters that can fund 105 scholarships and then fund all the additional scholarships that have to go to Title IX, if you can only have 2 schools in your conference, what does it do to the rest of the conference? What are you playing for if you can't compete on the same level field? That's why the NCAA has to get this antitrust exemption, get this under control. But this is all their fault. They created this monster that has happened to them. And they need a CEO with great business leadership, and they're obviously going to need great football leadership to fix this, because I don't think it's good in your conference if you just got Michigan and Ohio State and nobody else can keep up financially. You're, Northwestern and Maryland and all that. And it's the same thing in the damn Southeastern Conference. They may have Alabama and they may have Georgia and all that. But, if you're Vanderbilt or you're Kentucky, you can't compete. How good is that for college football? That's the issue that I'm standing on right now. Is I think James Franklin, Penn State, used the word uniformity. There needs to be uniformity in college football for every conference, how they're going to operate, the amount of scholarships they can give, the amount of money that everybody operates the same amount of money, NIL, and changes to in the transfer portal. I don't know, you buy that or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a time of change. So it's disruptive, right? And I mean, think about back in the day, college football has always been sort of a conservative sport. There wasn't a whole lot of crazy stuff going on. But in the last, with conference realignment and now the NIL, in the end, this is good for the players, and it's righteous and moral for the players to get some share of that gigantic money that's flowing through their sport. But yeah, I mean, right now it's all lopsided. There's only 2 teams in a conference, and maybe he's going to have money. They've got to solve the problem, but it's just going to be a bit of a rocky road until they kind of can smooth out the rough edges. Right now, I mean, Ed O'Bannon and UCLA, when he was getting screwed out of his name, image, and likeness in video games, he had a righteous cause. And I think it's good that the players can get compensation. I mean, pay them. They deserve it.
But now it's the pendulum's gone from over here, where it was really bad, to over here, where it's so out of control and so unfair. And the damage to a lot of these programs is really severe because they can't compete.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It is swung too far. So they're going to have to figure out a way to kind of manage this process a little better. I mean, we've talked about having the free agent period to be right after the national championship game. There are a lot of things like that can be done. But yeah, I mean, it's a paradigm shift in college football.
Concur with you. Okay, a couple more here.
Okay, let's go here. Talk about the MLB salary cap. This is from DK. He goes, MLB is an effing joke. Everywhere you look at it, the MLB machine is nothing more than fuel for greed, corruption, and manipulation. Has been since its inception and will be for its entire existence.
Boy, that's bitter. That's amazing. We've just given people a chance to espouse their philosophies of life.
Yeah.
I mean, baseball needs a salary cap. Baseball needs a floor to spending, but there's nothing wrong with, quote, the game of baseball. There's nothing wrong with the game of the NFL. The NFL has its problems, though, vis-a-vis CTE, concussions, and all that calamity. NBA's got its own set of problems. It's a revenue maker. It's printing dollar bills, but the player deportment problem, I think, in the NBA is so out of control. I think it damages the product on the floor. And then obviously the NHL is trying to find its way, and it's become a moneymaker. But they've got issues too with the fighting thing has seemed to have grown again. So National Hockey League's got jobs to be done, and college football and college basketball, because of the NIL transfer portal, I think is so far out of control. I think it's damaged the sport. Sorry to be negative, but that's the way it is.
See, I have a very different take on this. So I think the sport, when right now as fans, we love these sports and we spend money on these sports, whether we're going to the game or buying the merch, or maybe we're paying for a subscription on Peacock or Amazon Prime to watch these games, which, by the way, isn't a lot of money. But the fact that there's so much interest and so much money and so much advertising and marketing that goes into these sports, it makes sense that the players and the owners are going to be enjoying a very profitable revenue stream. And so if you're going to have all this big money, you want to see the players get paid. You wouldn't want the owners to get it, and we'd still be back in the Kurt Flood area of having the players under contract and couldn't move around. So I just think that when a guy like, I don't know, pick anybody that just signed a big contract, pick like Roki Sasaki, he's going to make a big money contract here in a bit. He's got to praise him and say, good for you, man. You achieved something, you made some money, your talent is being recognized, and just love him for that.
No argument there. But the one big salary impacts every other salary. You got everybody in the NBA, John's making $40 million a year, including bad actors and guys who can't play. Everybody's making money. It's crazy.
Well, because the fans want to spend money on the sport. So, but you're right. There are some dogs that are getting paid a lot of money that probably shouldn't be getting paid that. But I think part of it is that all of us still believe that we could play in Major League Baseball. You just give us a day. We could probably play right field for a day or two. Maybe back in the day, we still remember that we could play basketball. It still feels like a kid's game. And I think some people are kind of bitter about that. The other guys are getting paid for doing what I was able to do in high school.
I'm not bitter about the amount of money they're making, because the business of the sport has allowed that money to come into the pot. But there's just so many other problems here. And you got collective bargaining, and that's why you have unions, and they'll solve it. I don't know how they're going to solve the college athletic problem, because I think that's much deeper and much more severe. It's got a lot more implications, because that also involves women's sports, Title IX, federal law, et cetera.
It's trickier.
It's a lot deeper dive now than it was before. Okay, two more here. Let's do two more.
Okay, let's go here. Talk about Padres Sasaki. He goes, Lee, what happens when the Padres don't get Sasaki?
Well, the problem for AJ Preller is he's going to have to move guys off this roster, because as of noon today, his payroll is $244 million total. That includes benefits and everything, which pushes him over the tax. So guys have to leave here. At least now they know what Arise's salary will be. So if somebody wants to make a trade for Arise, they'll know what it's going to cost them. They know what Cease. But if you delete them from the roster and you can't go get anybody else, because virtually all the marquee names now are off the board, then you're telling me that Johnny Brito and Randy Vasquez and Matt Waldron are going to be part of my rotation in the pennant race. I think you got a real problem here, because they've been paralyzed. I was told by an agent they are paralyzed, and that's why they've not been able to make a deal. They've not spent one penny on a player from the outside, one of 5 or 6 teams that have done nothing in free agency. So the Padres tonight are not the same team because they got guys who are going to leave here. They're not the same team that we saw almost beat the Dodgers last year in the playoffs, and that's a problem.
Well, they've signed a few guys, but like Brousseau is another one, but I think they're only like minor league deals,
Yeah,
right?
they're all AAA guys.
Yeah, so there's no like 40-man roster additions, I think, that are going to be making big money.
Yep.
But it's difficult. Now, imagine Michael King. He's going to arbitration. That sometimes creates a lot of bad blood, bad feelings. What do you think about that?
Well, you don't let the player go into the hearing. It's the agent, the club, and they present the facts. But you can always settle. They might be arguing right now, what's the pay hike he gets this year based on last year? Or they might be asking, if we give you a 3-year deal, what's the dollar value in the second year and the third year of the contract? But it's not like he's locked out. You can still negotiate. Is he going to arbitration? Sure. But you can still negotiate today or tomorrow about a 3-year deal or a 5-year deal or whatever. And you can negotiate right up to the beginning of the arbitration hearing. So they have a window there to get that done, but they didn't get the 1-year deal done.
Yeah, imagine, you're right. They need to keep the player out of that hearing because the team is going to bring up a lot of data that's legitimate and factual that's going to paint a negative story. Michael King, by the way, he deserves it. That kid is very deserving, showed us a lot. It'd be a shame to lose him or to lose Cease or Arise. I mean, this whole Padre mess is going to we're riding high on the roller coaster with the Padres, and now we're just going through a big dip.
Well, now the reality is somebody's going to exit because now we know what the prices are for Cease and Arise, and Padres can't afford to keep them both. Somebody's going to exit. And if you don't get Sasaki, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm just giving you the facts, Jack.
So I have a question here, just to kind of wrap up our podcast for today. We got all these big time football games coming up, with college football playoffs and the NFL playoffs. What game are you most looking forward to?
I am a junkie. I just watch them all. I'm sorry. Just apologizes in advance. Don't call me. Don't text me. I'm watching football tonight. I'm watching football tomorrow. And I start at 1:25 on Saturday. We're watching the NFL playoffs Saturday, Sunday. And then we got Monday Night Football. So we'll be here Monday. We're going to do this podcast on Monday. We will have a lot to talk about by Monday. I guarantee you that, as if we didn't have a lot today.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton going on right now.
John almost had a heart attack when I gave him the list of the topics on the table.
Yeah. I mean, I was like going, holy crap, how am I going to fit all these logos on the screen? We got to split this into 2 or 3. So it's all good. But I saw someone make a comment about this, that the Texans are playing on the Saturday game, against the Chargers, and that the Texans always get the Saturday game. Have you caught on to that kind of a thing? They're sort of disrespected.
Well, they're not as marquee as, say, Baltimore Ravens, or Buffalo Bills,
right,
or quote Kansas City Chiefs. So that's probably why they're an early game. But somebody's got to fill those TV slots, so that's where it is.
Yeah, football every day, all day. Here we go.
As I would say, great sports weekend. It's coming.
That's it.
Hey, this podcast brought to you by Dixieline Lumber and Home Center.